Okay, just wait for the pings to finish. Well, I'm just going to say good morning in England here to you all. I'm Ashley Goodall, and I work for the Iraq Britain Business Council. And we have members all over the place, quite a few online here today, so welcome to them. A particular hello and a thank you and a welcome to the companies associated with the UAE Business Council, and also to the Chambers of Commerce in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. We have quite a range of people here, Brits and all sorts of people, I imagine, from Arabic countries. So we're just about to start. I think without more ado, I'm going to start off. And just to say that, I'm going to say it again, that we have a big conference in Basrah on the 4th and the 5th of December, to which you are all invited. So it's going to be a big one. We have a lot of high profile people like the governor of Basrah. We have a lot of our top companies like BP joining us. It's going to be a very big conference and it's free to attend. So if you can get to the Millennium Hotel in Basrah on the 3rd, the reception is on the 3rd, on the 4th is the main business day, and on the 5th is a big education day. We'd be delighted to see you. And details will be posted up as to where you can apply and be qualified to come. So without more ado, I'd like to introduce the panel. We're probably going to be about 35, 40 minutes today. First off, I'd like to introduce John Wilks, who was previous ambassador to Iraq and Qatar and various other territories, and he's an advisory member of Iraq Britain Business Council. Once John will be talking about geopolitics, followed by Amar Shubar of Management Partners, who's got a very interesting and reasonably detailed presentation on business sectors, opportunities, and an overview from that point of view. We'll be followed by John Kitchen of Defaf, who deal with security and can guide you seamlessly through Iraq, followed by David Tannourji from Mselect, who will be talking about workforce, how to recruit people, the dynamics, and how you can outsource, etc. Followed by Natasha of Tishtash, who has marketed and delivers communications into Iraq for brands. So you're going to have a whole suite of people that can help you to do business in Iraq. Finally, Bradley's going to talk about his view from the UAE, and I think we're going to find this rather an interesting conversation. So people are still loading up, which is great, but without more ado, I'm going to hand over to John Wilks. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Ashley, and welcome everybody. I'm John Wilks. I was British Ambassador to Iraq between 2017 and 2019. And then after 4 years in Qatar, I left the diplomatic service, and now I'm a private sector consultant and working with the Iraq Britain Business Council, among others. And I've been in Iraq 4 times in the last year. And so that's the first set of visits I've done since I left, did my farewell tour in 2019. So I bring a perspective particularly based on the last couple of years, but I've been working in Iraq since 2003. I wrote in the British Embassy and I did other postings in Iraq in between. So I bring the 22-year perspective as well to this. What's remarkable, I did 2 visits to Baghdad, 3 visits to Baghdad actually, and 1 to Basra, and I was also in Erbil just about a year ago. So 5 visits in total. We've entered a new phase based on security improvements and stabilization that feels to me pretty resilient and sustainable, and visible reconstruction in Baghdad and Basra and other provinces. And I think while it's taken much longer than any of us would have wished, time is a great healer. And Iraqis themselves, the leadership, people in institutions have matured. And I've noticed that even in the 6 years since I was last there. There is, I think, a maturity about Iraq's regional situation, which enabled them through their relationship with their neighbors, but also with the US and with Europe, to stay out of the regional conflicts, Israel, Iran, of the last year, and to be a factor for the first time in many decades, going way back, being a factor for stability in the region and for bringing people together. So their foreign policy actually now is one of balancing their neighbors, China, the US, and Europe. And particularly when it comes to Western relationships, and that includes Western business, there is a welcome and a wish to build and rebuild those relationships. You will have seen maybe this morning the news about Exxon agreeing in principle to come back into the Majnoon oil field. We've obviously had BP up in the north around Kirkuk, Total and others. But this reflects something that is also true in the non-oil sectors, that there's a real welcome for Western business, and particularly reputable Western businesses that are going to help Iraq set high standards for itself. And Western standards, although China is very much present in the market, Western standards, I think, are the standards that most Iraqis are aiming for. Now, we noticed this in the Iraq-Britain Business Council because our membership is up. We have had huge interest in our conference earlier this year in Baghdad. We filled the hall in the Rashid Hotel. We've got huge interest in our conference in Basra in December. And that's, I think, a reflection of the fact that companies that know Iraq and companies maybe that have looked at Iraq in the past and are looking again, and indeed new blood, are starting to see that there is something new and positive and worth engaging with in Iraq. When I was in Iraq end of last month, so a couple of weeks ago, obviously the election campaign is starting. There is some slightly jumpy, dramatic reporting about potential downsides for security and stability. Talking to the politicians and business, though, I think actually Iraq is going to manage these elections without a serious dent to its progress on stabilization. It may not change that much in that the establishment, the ruling parties, the ruling figures, who are all growing their own business empires, by the way, which is part of stabilization. They have a real stake in making sure that security improvements continue, that the business environment allows their businesses to develop and to develop partnerships abroad. It seems to me they're all going to be a factor for making sure they get through these elections in pretty good shape. We don't know who the next Prime Minister is going to be. The current Prime Minister gets a lot of credit for overseeing reconstruction in the last 2 or 3 years. But there's a general cultural propensity in the Iraqi elite not to have prime ministers for 2 terms. So that's one of the issues to be decided in the election. How well will Prime Minister Mohammed al-Sudani do? And will that position him to either come back or to be a big influence in the next phase? But whatever we say about the individuals at the top of the government, I think the establishment in Baghdad will continue, and therefore we can expect more continuity than change. Now, there's a downside to that in that the big issues that Iraq faces are corruption and bureaucracy and institutional weakness. And although there are moves in certain areas to tackle those issues, including with a long-term view in some cases, they are still, I would say, the major obstacles to doing business in Iraq. But what we've proved with IBBC is that we can support business to cut through those obstacles and to do business in a clean and reputable way with good partners on the ground. It's one of the reasons why our services are in increasing demand, because Iraq does remain a frontier market. It's progressing, it's moving in the right direction, but it is by no means easy just to turn up and start operating. I would say that one of the most important areas for us, for the UK partnering with Iraq, is in building these institutions, and particularly the leadership of these institutions. We are, the UK as a whole is part of Iraq's program of taking its most gifted students and giving them the chance once they've graduated in Iraq to go abroad to complete their studies. We take a large proportion in the UK of those gifted Iraqis, and the idea behind that is the future leadership of the country. So not only do we take a large proportion to the UK, the US also takes a lot, and other Western countries. We're also very well placed as UK to help build institutions, and that might be the banking sector, it might be government institutions, it might be the military and security forces. I think, you know, Iraqis are orienting towards global standards as recognized by the West, and that positions reputable Western companies and Western partners to build relationships with Iraq in general. I think I'll leave it at that. Happy to take questions, but in conclusion, I've seen a big positive difference in the last 6 years since I was ambassador. And I think the perspective of decades, Iraq now is in its third decade since the big change of 2003. We're seeing sustainable progress on stabilization and reconstruction. So it is a good time to look at the Iraqi market. And above all, the practicalities, we will talk about this now, but the practicalities of actually going to Iraq. One of the great things for me, now I'm no longer a diplomat in armored cars and with close protection. As a businessman, I can walk around Baghdad and Basra dressed as a businessman with a briefcase, walking in and out of offices, meeting other businessmen. It feels much more normal. You should be thinking of Iraq as a sort of richer version of Lebanon, really, these days, rather than the sort of war zone that it was for many years after 2003. And so with that, I hope realistic but positive message, I'll hand back to Ashley.
Thank you very much, John. A great overview. And of course, just to add, we've just done a £12 billion trade deal with the government with Iraq. So it's quite serious in governmental level deals going on at the same time. Just to welcome the next speaker, which is Amar Shubar, who is from Management Partners, works very closely with the government of Iraq and also understands business. And Amar's going to take us through some quite interesting information on the sectors, etc. So Amar, over to you. Looking forward to this.
Thank you so much, Ashley. A pleasure to meet you. Are you able to see my screen? I think it's the first time I'm using that in this format.
Yes, it's good. Thank you.
Okay, great. So my name is Amar Shubar. I'm a partner with Management Partners. We are a management consulting firm working across the Middle East region, but have been working in Iraq now for the last 15 years, from 2010, especially around three main service lines, which is economic development, corporate and business strategy, as well as business and technology transformation. So Ashley was so kind and asked me to give a quick overview in terms of the economic outlook of Iraq, as well as especially in terms of the trade relationship between the UAE and the GCC with Iraq, and then also in terms of the investment opportunity and the key sectors, and to give a very quick snapshot in terms of what's going on, what are the interesting developments happening there. So in terms of overall economic outlook, Iraq is growing steadily over the last years with a typical up and down, but I think now expected to grow a little bit stronger than the global average, around 4% in GDP. Huge population growth in terms of steady expanding, which is also creating challenges but opportunities for Iraq in terms of young population. Some of the key growth drivers and developments are further expansion in terms of oil and gas and energy projects. A lot of investments now starting to materialize in renewable energies. They started basically with a target of 10 gigawatts. They want to add another 5 gigawatt. There's obviously very slow in terms of implementation, but given basically the cost advantage of renewable, especially solar, compared to even taking out the fuel cost, just the capital cost requirements for conventional energy, renewable is a key factor, and Iraq will be stronger focusing on that, especially given the gas limitations they are currently having and restriction of importing gas from Iran. And they have not yet fully converted all associated gas to gas. And they would also want to keep more of that in terms of downstream for petrochemical production. So that's why we also see a big shift into renewables. Another big factor in terms of driving investment and development is the development road project, which is also now advancing in terms of development of the port, development of the railroads, street developments, which we also see will help develop overall trade activities in Iraq, infrastructure in terms of physical and transport infrastructure, as well as data infrastructure. So part of that road development and the connection is data transit through Iraq, which is also a very important topic, and a lot of regional telecom companies and data aggregators are looking for Iraq as an alternative route to the Suez Canal in order to connect the Middle East and Africa, especially also India, with Europe in terms of data connectivity and fiber connectivities, versus now the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, given basically the security considerations and challenges which are happening over the last couple of years. Yeah. Moving forward in terms of the trade relationship, UAE has become the biggest trade partner with Iraq, I think surpassing Iran and Turkey, and especially after 2021, it jumped nearly doubled with continuous steady growth. There have been investment treaty between Iraq and UAE, as well as with Saudi and Iraq, in terms of investment commitments of each one about $3 billion, which now are going in terms of infrastructure projects, PPP agreements, be it ports, as well as in energy projects, and developing that direction. Saudi has now transferred that pledge in terms of setting up a Saudi-Iraq investment company under PIF, which is then focusing on investment opportunities and increasing trade relationships into Iraq. So that's a little bit in terms of the snapshots, and also highlighting the importance of UAE as I think what we discussed before, kind of springboard, jumping board into Iraq, as a good place to make also trade with Iraq from here, given basically the relationship and also the agreement in terms of easing up the transfer between Iraq and the UAE, as well possibility to direct transfer in terms of dirhams versus to go always over the US dollar. In terms of sectors, and this a little bit of a glimpse in terms of the investment authority, which they have now put up around 450 billion of investment opportunities across 12 sectors, but they also reflect what the key sectors currently are in Iraq, and which are of interest. So obviously oil and gas, the production, extension, associated gas coverage, as well as downstream and refinery are big elements here. Electricity, there's a big gap in terms of electricity production. Current estimation is that Iraq needs another 30 gigawatt over the next 5 to 6 years just to keep up and to close the gap, which is a huge number. Housing and real estate, I think if you have been in Baghdad recently, you see basically how much new housing projects have been building up. which I think is one of the key achievements of the current government to enable and to remove a lot of the roadblocks related to housing construction and the developments. And now I think we are seeing a lot of new residential development, commercial development popping up in Iraq and Baghdad especially becoming now getting an actual skyline. So that's very promising to see. And while it always creates a little bit of a bubble in terms of supply and demand, but I think the long-term demand is very clear. There's a gap there have been a big gap in the past in order to compensate to that, but also given the population growth, there's a huge demand in terms of expanding Baghdad, expanding basically housing opportunities across Iraq. Agriculture, I think, has been now growing. We see more and more interest in terms of institutions to develop the agricultural sector. And Iraq is now also protecting the internal market a little bit more than it was in the past. So it makes sense to grow, but also to make Iraq agricultural products ready in terms of packaging and marketing to export it outside. So there's a possibility in terms of agricultural lands, in terms of water supply, if it's managed correctly, to be also a net agricultural product exporter. And so there are some developments there in terms of some products, dates where they have started doing that, but there's a long way to go. But I think overall there is an interesting opportunities where we have discussed with a number of entities and investors who are looking basically for investment into agriculture for the domestic market, from eggs to chickens, the livestock, but also to other agricultural products and crops. Healthcare is a big topic in Iraq. I think there's still a big gap in terms of the healthcare supply and the quality of healthcare supply, unfortunately. So private institutions are expanding. In terms of hospital setups, we are seeing more and more PPP and healthcare and hospital operation contracts, which we have supported in terms of outsourcing agreements. And there's a big opportunity, especially for chronic disease, to provide high quality, good quality healthcare provision in Iraq itself. As part of the investment opportunities. In addition, health insurance is now also picking up. So the government now has launched its public health insurance scheme, but also private insurance companies are now providing more and more coverage in Iraq. And so the overall payer-provider ecosystem is building up, which allows then for higher quality health service provision. Tourism is interesting, not only religious tourism, but also cultural tourism has now picking up. I think now Baghdad and Kurdistan have created a lot of entertainment and interesting tourist places. Baghdad has now also been awarded as a cultural tourist capital of 2025. So there is a long way to go in order to set up the infrastructure, but we see there are also opportunities in terms of providing proper tourism packages, especially connected with cultural tourism, as an interesting investment opportunity. Manufacturing, so a number of products has now been banned to be imported, which allows for manufacturing opportunities. So we see and have been helping clients in a number of investment feasibility studies related to juices, and ice cream, dairy products, which have been limited or basically exempt, whereas there's currently an import ban, or the expiry rates does not allow for it to be effectively imported from neighboring countries. We see uptake in construction materials, given basically the increased demand. So in terms of bricks manufacturing, in terms of cement manufacturing, where there's an increased demand, as well as also imports have been prohibited, which allows for local investment opportunities and local production to flourish. Digital and ICT, so I mentioned already in terms of digital transit for Iraq, but investment in terms of internet connectivity, fiber to the rollout has been now pushed in Iraq, currently covering around, at least based on the statistics, 30% to 40% of the Iraqi households. That's basically from central Iraq, but also Kurdistan has driven the fiber to the home rollout. We see investment in data center, especially for data caching and for the increased data application, social media data application usage, but also enterprise usage. And now, in terms of the government side, still a big gap to go, but stronger and stronger drive to start driving digital transformation within the government sector, mostly through PPPs, in terms of defining an whole application sector, be it in terms of ports operations or customs, to be outsourced in a turnkey projects, and the provider getting similar to models which Elm has done in Saudi, to provide that as a PPP, where they're getting fees from the end customers to pay off the digital investments. We see free zones in terms of industrial zones now also flourishing, and providing in terms of interesting investment opportunities, especially also there were a couple of discussions for to incentivize Saudi Arabian production in Iraq to set up an industrial zone in Iraq to help provide the right infrastructure for productions there. And environment, so again, I think a long way to go, but there's a very interesting opportunity besides, let's say, water processing, desalinations, in terms of enhanced oil recovery, which Iraq really has not tapped in, which would help in terms of increasing oil production on one hand, as well as basically creating carbon capturing storage opportunities, which under the current political conversation has been put in the background, but I think in the longer run it's a very important area to work on, and I think it's important for Iraq to realize these opportunities as well. So that's in a nutshell. I stop here in case any questions, and would then hand over back to Ashley.
Amar, thank you very much indeed. And I think this will be available, all the presentations will be available in the chat, so you can take this away and absorb it. Amar, that's a very detailed and very knowledgeable insight. And I'm sure that if anyone wants to come into Iraq, you'd be able to advise them very clearly on the opportunities in each sector.
Thank you. So, actually, I think the only thing is that posting anything on the chat, any attachment, I think it's limited for external participants. So if you could do that from IBBC directly, yes. I think that would be great. Thank you.
And what we can do is, in following up, anyone that signed up will get a recording of this, and at the same time, any packages of presentations. So thank you very much, Amar. Great work. What strikes me, by the way, is that it seems that almost every single sector is in expansion mode, and Iraq is in a bit of a catch-up economy, driven also by a rapidly growing population.
Yes, that's correct. I think we have every sector still, there's pent-up demand. There's relatively high income if you compare Iraq towards Jordan, Syria, Beirut. So I think there's a growing population, good income. So there's a lot of domestic demand, which I think still is underserved. in terms of quality and quantity.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Now, if we could move on to John Kitchen from Defaf. We're still getting people signing up, by the way. We've hit about 120 people on, so there's terrific turnout. Thank you. John Kitchen from Defaf, would you like to come forward and tell us about security and how people can navigate through Iraq and your view of where things are on that front?
Yeah, thanks, Ashley, and thank you for inviting us to speak today. Really appreciate that. Firstly, Defaf Alkhaleej, we are a 100% local company. I'm John Kitchen, as Ashley mentioned. I'm the COO for Defaf Alkhaleej. Personally, I've been in Iraq for around 19 years now. 12 of those years I've been working with local security providers, most of which has been focused in support of the oil and gas sector in southern Iraq. So 95% of what we do at Defaf Alkhaleej is supporting the oil and gas sector across those markets. Well, we do have some presence in central Iraq, but really we're there to support companies operating in the south. I'll briefly touch on the security situation and our overview of that over the past few months or so. So we've taken data from July to October and having a look at those kind of trends of incidents that we see. Overall, Iraq is relatively stable, but we are seeing, particularly in central and southern Iraq, protests mainly towards energy sector, local government employment, many people disgruntled with levels of employment in southern Iraq, for example. Of the 200 or so incidents that are recorded that we've analysed, 80% of those are typically low impact or localised incidents. We do see some tribal disputes, particularly in Maysan, Basra and other regions where we operate as well. And criminal activity, as always, is prevalent across the country. Having said that, it's relatively stable, and it is easy for businesses to operate from a security perspective. Very briefly, everyone's fully aware that we have the national elections approaching in early November, and we're advising our clients, of course, that we expect from now until those elections to see some medium level disruption, heightened security posture, potential road closure, etc. And during the election week after the 10th and 11th of November, potential curfews, some crowds gathering, and to be very aware of that and to consider that in the operational planning side of things as well. And post-election, we'll continue to see some protests, we hope. Having said that, and as Jonathan mentioned earlier, I think the Iraqi government will manage that well, and we hope to not see too much disruption. But of course, we must plan for that, and we're advising our clients, existing clients and new clients that we're speaking to now that are entering the Iraq market, many of them for the first time, to plan for disruption, to maintain situational awareness, and engage early as well with their partners in many areas that they support. One thing that Ashley has mentioned and wanted me to touch on, really, the main overview, is some of the lessons learned and how we supported some of our clients coming into market, and how, as a security company and a local company, we have advised on the complexities of operating in Iraq, particularly in southern Iraq. And really considering the complexities of the government process, the local hiring processes, and how that can support risk management as well. It's really critical that companies operating understand how the local hiring process, engagement with local tribal leaders, local communities can really help mitigate that risk further. Some examples, we have been engaged with Total Energies, for example, for a number of years. We're one of their main security providers, and we've helped to navigate the complexities in the early development of the Batawi oil field. We're working with KCA Deutschtag at the moment, fairly new to market in southern Iraq, and helping them develop their plans and market entry to supporting new oil and gas fields there. And we really do, as Defaf Alkhaleej, the local company, help to navigate the complexities of operating in southern Iraq and central Iraq as well, on occasion. And that also involves helping companies develop their contingency planning mechanisms and how we can help them adapt that for the operating environment as well. I think the key lessons from our organisations that we've been supporting is really a focus on local engagement above all, and compliance and due diligence with the partners and suppliers that they're looking to work with, and really preparing their contingency planning as well. I know we don't have long, so that's really it for me, Ashley, and happy to take any questions from any members afterwards, of course. And I'll hand over back to Ashley.
Thank you very much, John. Great, succinct and interesting. Now over to David Tannourji. David works for Mselect, who have got a surprisingly large footprint across the Middle East, growing rapidly. Looking forward to hearing what you're saying, David.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ashley. Hi, everyone. My name is David. I'm the operations manager at Mselect. Mselect have been operating in Iraq for nearly 14 years now, and we've been supporting and still supporting international and local companies with their entry, setup, growth in the country, and how to do the business actually in Iraq. Over the years, we've partnered with major energy operators, telecom service companies, and multinational organizations. We help them to build their teams, manage their operations, and make sure that they are staying compliant with the Iraqi regulations, especially in here when we talk about the labor law and the labor code. Again, as mentioned, Mselect is a staffing agency, so I'll try to cover all the topics related on the staffing, how you will need to hire the people in the country, what kind of rules and regulations that you need to be aware of from day one. Can you see my screen? I would assume yes. Okay, good. Look, when we speak about Iraq, we need to speak about two components: the opportunities and the realities. I think my friend Amar already covered a big part on the opportunities. That it's like a juicy country when you are looking for to do business in here. The market share is huge, and the facilities that you will find to enter the market is amazing. But as mentioned also, success here depends on understanding the local regulations, culture, and the operations. There is an opportunity, but you need to be careful on how you are entering. Usually, and from our own experience in the past 14 years, the most challenges can be small down into three main points. The first one is, which is the first part that you need to do, is navigating the licenses and compliance requirements. Compliance can be very challenging. To know what kind of licenses you need to have to operate is a very key, so you won't fall into troubles legally later on. Second part is with whom you are entering. When we say with whom you are entering, this means your manpower, your staff. Managing local and expatriates workforce in Iraq is very challenging. And when we talk about the complexity in here, we're talking about the labor law, we're talking Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Oil if you are targeting energy in southern Iraq. Once you have these set up, you need to pay attention and keep an eye on your operational setup. Through our work with our clients in Iraq, we've learned that planning with these factors in mind early on can prevent major headaches that you will face later. For the companies that planning to newly entering the market, having trusted local advisor can make a huge, massive difference, because your local partner, and always look for a local partner, local Iraqi company who have been there, who have helped other companies entering, because these local partners and local advisors will help you navigating the regulations, optimize correctly your workforce strategy, and set up the operation efficiently. Always keep in mind compliance and licensing, understanding labor and immigration laws, because companies doing investment in Iraq needs to know what are the immigration, how they can bring their expats, and what are the localization rules and regulations. Keep in mind always that you have different regions in Iraq. These different regions will apply different rules and regulations. And then, of course, you need to keep an eye and make sure that your recruitment is based on qualified locals plus your expatriate staff. Moving to what new entrants should focus on. There are 5 components that always you need to focus on. Understand the regulation as early as possible, even before entering the country, because, and I want to highlight this one clearly, each region in Iraq has its own procedure. As you guys know, in Iraq, there are two regions. You have the federal Iraq and the Kurdistan region, two different governments, two different regulations, even two separate registration for the company. If you are registered in federal Iraq to do business in north of Iraq in the Kurdistan region, you need to have a separate registration. Even when we speak about federal Iraq itself, regulations for labor law, not the labor law, but the labor code and how to enter the field and how to have the correct permisses to do the business, it's different between Baghdad and Basra. Always keep in mind on that. If you are entering Basra, make sure you understand Basra and you understand the regulations for Basra, same for the other cities. The second point is always make sure you are building a reliable local network. Trust and relationship often drive progress more than formalities. Also, this is something John highlighted, that you need to be in touch locally. You need to have your connections locally. Some areas in Iraq, to do the business, you need to have local strong relationship with the tribes, with the people controlling the area. Otherwise, there will be barriers stopping you from doing your operation. The third, and I think it's the most important part, make sure you are investing in your workforce strategy. Blend the local talent with the experienced expats to make sure that the compliance and retention, because compliance and retention are keys. Yeah. I know that the split between locals and expats based on localization is a bit hard to keep up. We're talking about 80 to 20%, and other regions 75 to 25%. I know that some people will face challenges finding the right candidates for your job, for your business, especially in challenging areas. But this doesn't mean that they don't exist. With the proper learning and development, with the proper training path in place, you can train the locals with the expats being supportive, so you can get your business successful. The last 2 points, you need to plan your operations realistically. When I say realistically, again, understanding the culture, the operation, the rules and regulations, and the most important part also, stay adaptable. Flexibility is essential in Iraq. What you will hear in the morning can flip in the afternoon. Regulations change overnight. Make sure that you are always flexible. Don't make all of your processes based on a fixed rule, and make sure that you diverse your expertise in the country so you can adapt to any change that you will face. Keep in mind, these are not just checkbox, guys. These are areas that separate successful entries from those that will struggle in the future. The last part of my slide is for us as Mselect and how Mselect can help. I will highlight again that we have been in the market for 14 years on the ground with on the ground experience supporting international and local clients. We always provide advisory support on the compliance and workforce management and operations to all of our clients. Our deep experience in the recruitment and outsourcing and the facility management across all regions of Iraq gave us this advantage to be partners to international companies entering Iraq for the first time. And this something can be seen on our website with that. The names, our portfolio of the names of the companies we work with, our exclusive contracts for 14 years till now with ExxonMobil, our massive contract that we have with BP, our business that we have with Total Energies, Huawei, Samsung, Visa, and many other companies that entered Iraq through us. I can give also another example, Sani, which we spoke about earlier, Sani Heavy Industries, which is one of the massive heavy industry companies that when they decided to enter the Middle East, they did it with Mselect. They started with us in Iraq, and we both together expanded to UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Lebanon. And of course, what helped us is our local presence, our local ownership. We are 100% local Iraqi company applying international standard to our business that international companies felt safe to adapt to right away. This is exactly the approach we take at Mselect. I mean, we partner with companies to advise and guide. We do not treat our clients as clients. We treat them as partners. We help them to make we help to make them always informed. We inform them always on the decisions and what they need to avoid to fall into the pitfalls, and they can I mean, they use us as the partner so they can always focus on growing their business and focus on their core business. So to end this from my side, for any company planning to enter Iraq, my advice is always Partner locally, this is the most important part. Always have a local partner on the ground, at least to understand the culture, regulations, and how to treat your workforce and manpower. Invest in understanding the market. Iraq rewards who commit long term. You don't lose faith in the first 3 months or 6 months. It's gonna be challenging, but believe me, this all will pay back later. And always build the relationship, because in Iraq, trust and credibility open more doors than contract alone. This is when it comes to the presentation and what you need to know when you are entering Iraq. However, there is another point I want to highlight is for the staffing part specifically. There is something we usually do. It's a yearly practice we do at Mselect, which we call it the Manpower Outlook Report. It's a practice we do every year, and we did it also for 2025. The Outlook report is like a simple report, which I'm gonna hover off now. It's a long one, so I'm not gonna take time to present it, but I'm gonna send you all the link to know what is the Outlook report. So the Outlook report, if I have the time, actually, for like 30 seconds, it's the Iraq Employment Outlook. It shows the trend for the year. What are the hiring intentions? What are the hiring intentions by the region, by the industry? What is the size of the organizations that's looking to hire? What are the industries looking to hire? And it's also highlight what are the missing skills and what are the training courses needed. I'm not gonna go through it. It's a long document, but however, I'm happy to share here on the chat the link where you can go and download this report, which we have noticed many times that it's very informative, and it helped a lot of companies to understand how they can build up their manpower. Please, thank you so much for listening, and please let me know if you have any questions. I'm very much happy to answer. And back to Ashley. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you very much, David. And I can concur that your report is excellent, and it regularly comes out each year, and it's a really good overview of what's happening in Iraq. So thank you very much, David. I'm running a little short of time, so I'm going to move on now, if that's okay. What we'll do is we'll probably send you a link following up with all the different presentations from Iraq Britain Business Council to you after this event. So thank you. Now I'd like to now go on to Natasha Shaw-Weatherall, who is, hello Natasha, you there? Is operating as a marketeer into Iraq. Looking forward to hearing what you've been doing and how you do it.
So from my perspective, so I'm married to an Iraqi, and he's very, very proud of his country. And I think he's lived in the UAE for 25 years. I've lived here for 15. And I think, he felt very strongly that, because I own a marketing agency with offices in the UK, Saudi and Dubai, and I had a lot of contacts with global brands wanting to go into Iraq. So we 3 years ago, we took our first brand into Iraq, and we launched Mont Blanc with the first boutique in Baghdad Mall. It's been 3 years now, so obviously, and we're opening our second Mont Blanc, and we're also opening a multi-brand store, and we've opened a beauty store with a curation of global brands that were not previously available as well. So we've come at it obviously from, I partner with my husband, we've taken brands into the country, but then as part of that, I've ended up with my agency marketing for brands launching in the region. So it's definitely been one of those, a case of a lot of test and learn. I think, I knew quite a lot about marketing in Saudi, so I assume maybe it wouldn't be too different to Saudi. But I think the thing that I would say, and I don't have very much time, obviously, but for anybody who is launching, definitely spend time in the market. You need to understand, the consumers there and what they're looking for, because it isn't like any other market or, even part of the region. And then even within that, like, every other people have touched on, the different regions, the different cities are very, very different. So I think definitely don't go into it with a one size fits approach. I think it's really, really important as well not to go into it like, obviously we've gone in with global brands, and it can be very, very easy to think that you can just take all of your global marketing and collateral and it will work in another region or country, but the reality is it doesn't. So localization is really, really important, as is learning, how different channels work in, Iraq as well. From obviously, we have found a lot of success with social media and digital marketing, but I think it depends very much on brand. But my key things definitely for you would be, just just be prepared to kind of look at things differently. Don't assume what you've always done will work. And definitely, I know networking, word of mouth is so powerful for us. That's been one of the key drivers as well. So time on the ground is really, really important. But no, definitely, there is so much opportunity in Iraq. We're really enjoying it. Yes, there's been some challenges. So, but no, we've learned a lot along the, we're still smiling 3 years on.
Thank you, Natasha. I imagine that there's not a lot of competition for marketing agencies in Iraq. What do you find there is?
No, I mean, we're getting now a lot of other agencies are asking us, even like UAE agencies, because a lot of people are turning on Iraq. And so we're getting a lot of people asking us if we can do that for them as well. My husband does want me to set up full force in Iraq. So let's see what the future holds.
Terrific. Well, I'm sure it'll be successful. That's great news for anyone who wants to take a brand into Iraq, or the UAE or UK, for example.
Yes.
Thank you, Nisha. And finally, we're going to be talking to Bradley Jones, who you'll all know and love, or hopefully. Bradley, you're going to respond from the UAE perspective. Just one thing I want to mention is that Amar Shubar talked about education, and we're very clear that there's a big demand for British education schools in Iraq. So there's a lot of opportunity. We've got about 3 members that deal with schooling. They're very high quality, and British schools are very much attractive, as are British universities. Anyway, that said, Bradley, look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Ashley, and I appreciate that I'm the last speaker, so I'll talk fast and try and leave some time for some questions at the end. So my presentation really is targeted at British companies who are thinking of using the UAE as their springboard for entry into the Iraq market. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the UAE and the dynamics happening in the UAE economy, which might impact your decision making on whether the UAE is the right place to use as your entry point into Iraq. I think the big story here in the UAE is economic diversification. It's not just about oil and gas anymore. In fact, 77% of the economy here, of GDP, comes from the non-oil and gas sector, 77%. And most of that growth is driven by very innovation-rich industries, such as AI, life sciences, data, energy transition, fintech, and so on. So I think the read across is that for British companies in any of those innovation-rich companies, there is relevance in basing yourselves in the UAE and using that as your Iraq entry point. The other big attraction is that the UAE has lots of free zones from which to launch your business into Iraq. Obviously, the most famous ones are KZAD in Abu Dhabi. You've got Jebel Ali free zone in Dubai, of course, and of course you've got DP World there, which has a direct shipping link to Iraq. But there are free zones in some of the smaller northern Emirates, particularly Ras Al Khaimah Economic Zone. So if you're looking at the UAE as your entry point into Iraq, do a bit of research on mapping out the free zones that exist here in the UAE. I think there's over 50 of them at the moment. In terms of the trade relationship, and I'm just referencing some of the slides from Amar's excellent presentation. There was a reference there to bilateral trade being worth $23 billion in 2023. It's now gone up to $28 billion. So you can see there's been a really year-on-year high growth in trade flows between the two countries. Although of that $28 billion, $22 billion is UAE exports to Iraq. And as Amar mentioned, Emirati dirhams can now be used to fund imports into Iraq since December 2023, I think. Again, as Amar's slide mentioned, the UAE and Iraq have a bilateral investment treaty. So that offers some protection to investors based here in the UAE who are wishing to structure their investments in Iraq through UAE entities. So that's quite an important game changer. The other thing to mention is that the UAE has a very, very proactive trade policy environment. It's negotiating what it calls CEPA agreements. CEPA stands for Common Economic Partnership Agreement, with countries all around the world. A couple of weeks ago, they signed a CEPA agreement with Angola. A few weeks ago, Anthony Albanese, the Prime Minister of Australia, was in Abu Dhabi to sign a CEPA agreement with the UAE. So they have a very proactive, outward-facing dynamic to negotiate free trade agreements with emerging economies. There isn't a CEPA agreement in the pipeline with Iraq at the moment, but I'm sure the Ministry of Economy here will be very cognizant of the the rapid pace of growth in UAE Iraq trade and investment relations, and I'm sure it's something that they would be receptive to thinking about going forwards. There are many British companies here that are already using the UAE as their springboard into Iraq, some of them in the traditional oil and gas sectors, such as BP, Shell, Petrofac, banking, Standard Chartered Bank, facilities management, Serco. But what we're seeing is more diversification. And you're seeing companies like Haleon, for example, which specialize in healthcare-related consumer goods products, who are based in the UAE and witnessing significant growth in the Iraq market. So that's a very quick snapshot of why the UAE presents a very benign and positive conduit into exploring the Iraq market. Happy to take questions now, and happy for my details to be shared with people on this call so that you can follow up with me afterwards. Back to you, Ashley.
Thank you very much indeed, Bradley. It also struck me that the UAE would be a good place to start going into the UK as well. They're so advanced in many areas.
Absolutely. And this is a key priority for the UAE UK Business Council. We're a bilateral business council, so we represent the UAE as well as the UK. And we're seeing that a lot of the new investment flows into the UK it's not just real estate anymore or acquisitions. There's a lot of investment going into things like life sciences, energy transition, fintech and data. And I think that trend will continue over the years ahead.
Anyway, I think I'm going to probably call an end because we've been on an hour. We will follow up with information, contacts, etc. I'd like to thank you all very much for listening to us all. We have a conference in Basrah, in case you missed that, on between the 3rd and the 5th of December. It is free to UAE Business Council members. And if you'd like to let Bradley know, and we'll try and qualify people that can come, it's at the Millennium Hotel. We have a reception on the 3rd. And on the main day, we have the government of Basrah. We have all of our top companies, the ones that you would know, BP, Shell, etc., Basrah Gas Company, plus a lot of other ones, and an education day on the 5th. So it's a big deal for us. We're going to have a lot of people there. It'll be fantastic networking. Please do apply via Bradley to us or directly to our website. Beyond that, we welcome anyone that wants to come in, like Haleon have just become members. So thank you for Bradley for that introduction. Iraq is a thriving market at the moment, but as you've heard, it's quite differentiated. You need local support to get you in there, and you need to do the work to work out what you need to do. But beyond that, it's a big market, it's growing, and it's stable. So with that thought, I'd like to thank all of our speakers, David Tannourji from Mselect, Jonathan Wilks from IBBC's Advisory Council, Bradley Jones from UAE UK Business Council, Tash of Tish Tash, Amar Shubar of Management Partners, and John Kitchen from Defaf. So thank you, everybody. People are still trying to get in, by the way. And we had a little bet earlier as how many we'd have on board. We thought, well, 80, 90. Well, we've had over 120. So thank you all very much for coming. We'll do this again, I think, and look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Anything about the visa?